Anatomy Lecture Notes Section 1T Introduction to Anatomy. What is human anatomy? Human anatomy, including histology and gross anatomy, is the study of the structures of the human body. The discipline of human anatomy involves the identification and description of the structures within the human body. What's in a name? Answer: everything. Due to the fact that most anatomical names come from Latin and Greek, these words have meaning in their original language, and it is very helpful and interesting to know the root meaning of these words, which is called etymology, as it helps in the learning process. Therefore, becoming familiar with the etymology of the anatomical term is an important component of studying human anatomy. For example, the word anatomy comes from the Greek language, composed of ana, up or apart, and tum, teva, cutting. Therefore, the word anatomy means cutting up or apart. As will become evident, the dissection aspects of anatomy are especially important as we study human anatomy. In general, anatomy can be divided into gross anatomy and microscopic anatomy. Gross anatomy in the healthcare field. Gross anatomy, macroscopic anatomy, refers to the study of structures that can be seen with the naked eye, such as most bones and muscles. Gross anatomy may involve dissection or non-invasive methods in order to examine regions. The objective is to gain insight about the larger structures of organs and organ systems and how they are interconnected. Microscopic anatomy, also known as histology, is a histotissue ology to study, is the study of tissues that are too small to be seen with the naked eye, and therefore require the use of various microscopes. Microscopy commonly involves studying tissues and cells that have been prepared by histological techniques in order to provide visual contrast of the different aspects of the specimen under examination. Sectioning and staining tissues is how the histological slides we will examine are prepared. Typically, tissue is treated with preserving and other agents which allow for the sectioning of tissue, which is cutting tissue into very thin slices. Histological stains such as hematoxylin and eusin, AHEV, are commonly added to the specimens in order to create and enhance visual contrast. The various stains generate different colors and intensities based primarily on the chemistry of the tissue and the dye as lipid, protein, acidic, basic, etc. This yield tissues they can be more easily distinguished when they are examined under a microscope, light or electron. General information. As mentioned, in anatomy, there is an emphasis on word roots and meanings. There are also a lot of words to become familiar with, and it becomes crucial to keep up with the enormous vocabulary content in this course. One of the best techniques is associating the root term with something that is already familiar. For example, the prefix hypo means below or under, and the term chondro is associated with cartilage. Eye and a part of ribs are made of cartilage. Thus, the term hypochondral refers to an anatomical region of the body under the ribs. Please note, a hypochondriac CU, someone who frequently believes they are ill, will often wave their hands around their tummy and declare they are not feeling well. 2. It will become very useful to relate as many anatomical structures to their root words in order to better understand their meaning. It is also valuable to be able to relate the concepts we study to everyday life as much as possible. Another important aspect is to know that grammatical constructs also relate to anatomical terms, resulting in similar-looking words with different endings, which indicate use as nouns and adjectives. Z.g. cranium is the noun and cranial is the adjective. In addition, anatomy uses many diminutives, a way of modifying a word to convey smallness or another quality of the object, or to convey a sense of endearment. A great example of this is organ and organelle. Organelle is almost a way of saying teeny tiny little organ. Note, generally the longer the word, the smaller the structure. In anatomy there are often several terms for one structure. In the past it was common to name structures after the discoverer's name. These are called eponyms. Currently, the more preferred terminology is that which is descriptive rather than named with an eponym. The descriptive name often describes function, location, shape, etc. However, It is important that students become familiar with both the eponym and the descriptive anatomical terminology. Here is an example. Compare eustachian tube with auditory tube. An Italian eustacia was cited as the first to describe this anatomical structure, but this name gives no indication as to its role or location. However, it is likely that the word auditory suggests a role for this structure in sound, or a location that has something to do with the ear. There are many examples. Here are a few more that we will encounter. Achilles tendon to calcaneal tendon of the heel. Bowman's capsule to glomerular capsule of the nephron in the kidney. Cowper's gland tap bulba, urethral gland of the male reproductive system. Fallopian tubes, uterine tubes of the female reproductive system. Graafian follicle to mature follicle of the female gamete, or the egg cell. A Kupffer cell to macrophages of the liver. Islets of Langerhans, pancreatic islets of the pancreas, where hormones are made. A Meissner's corpuscle, tactile corpuscle for touch sensation in the dermis of skin. Nissl bodies, ribosomes within nerve cell bodies. A sphincter of Oddi, hepatopancreatic sphincter to control the flow of bile and pancreatic juices. Pacinian corpuscle to lamellated corpuscle for pressure sensation deep in dermis of skin. Node of Ranvier, pymyelin sheath gaps along the length of myelinated axons of neurons. Canal of Schlemm to scleral venous sinus, which drains aqueous humor of the eyeball. Note that an eponym is using a proper name, and thus the name must be capitalized. 3. Introduction to the study of anatomy, structure as anatomy and function, physiology, are closely correlated in the human body. It is important to understand the connection between form and function when studying anatomy, as the form schizo-shaped of a structure is strongly indicative of what it does function. This approach to the study of anatomy is called functional anatomy, and it is the approach that we use in this course. Levels of organization. This describes examining things from the fundamental building blocks and ascending to more complex and larger structures. Below are the levels of organization for human anatomy listed from simplest to most complex. A. Atoms. B. Molecules. C. Organelles. D. Cells. E. Tissues. F. Organ systems. H. Organism. Any basic anatomy textbook will show this type of order of structures listed above and give specific examples of each level. This is also an example of how the course is constructed. We go from microstructures to macrostructures. 2. Basic functions of living organisms. A. Responsiveness. B. Growth. C. Differentiation. D. Metabolism. E. Movement. F. Reproduction. G. Excretion. 4. Each system we study in human anatomy, see below, will contain various components of these functions. We commence the study of human anatomy with histology, the study of tissues. This microanatomy requires the use of microscopes and the identification of not only the 4 primary tissue, but also the elements such as cells, fibers and other material that these tissues are composed of. The systems studied in anatomy. A. Tissues. 4 primary tissues. Epithelium, connective, muscular, nervous. B. Integumentary, skin, hair, nails and glands. C. Skeletal, bones, cartilage, articulations. D. Muscular, skeletal, cardiac and smooth muscles. E. Nervous, nerves, glial cells, central nervous system. NS, peripheral NS and autonomic NS, special senses, eyes, ears, touch, olfaction, equilibrium and taste. F. Endocrine, primary and secondary endocrine glands. G. Cardiovascular, heart, arteries, capillaries, veins. Lymphatic, lymph ducts, nodes, organs, tissues. H. Respiratory, lungs, bronchial tree. I. Digestive, mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, colon, liver, pancreas. J. Urinary, kidney, ureters, urinary bladder, urethra. K. Reproductive event, ovary, uterine tube, uterus, vagina. 2 tests, epididymis, ductus deferens, glands, urethra, penis. 5 IV regions of the body. A. The 4 quadrants. Division 1. Right upper quadrant 2, left upper quadrant 3, right lower quadrant 4, left lower quadrant. See your lab manual and or any basic anatomy textbook for a diagram of these regions. V. Planes of the body. A. Frontal S. Coronal plane divides body into front and back portions. B. Transverse cross, horizontal plane, divides body into superior and inferior portions. C. Sagittal, mid and parasagittal plane divides body into left and right portions. Mid-sagittal means equal left and right portions, whereas parasagittal means unequal left and right portions. Three-dimensional 3D visualization of structures in books can be difficult, especially reconstruction of serial slices of organs or of tissues. Try to think of common items first, like a pencil or an apple, and what would be exposed in a series of slices of the objects, or as viewed from different sides or perspectives. The figure to the right is also helpful as it shows the three planes of the body as well as the directional terms commonly used in anatomy. B. The descriptive abdominopelvic regions 1, right and left hypochondriac 2, right and left lumbar 3, right and left iliac inguinal 4, epigastric 5, umbilical 6, hypogastric 6, table 1, regions of the body described with anatomical landmarks and commonly terminology. Anatomical landmarks: cranium, cranial, skulls, oris, oral, mouth cervices, cervical, neck, acromion, shoulder, thoraces, says thoracic, chest, abdomen, abdominal, bile, glute, bowel, pink, brown, from the triangle, crown, and track, one, and cross a finger, cap, and polytennis, pumps, press, equal, and both round, and olympic, and alchemies, color of keynote, for island, cable, man, and brain, no life on its own, and see wonderful and pollen, level, and for well, and on,